Some people feel that airbags cause more harm than good. So there's a few things that happen. One, the airbag going off, there's powder. Two, it is an explosion. And three, the airbag can rub on your chest and you may get a first-degree burn or like a sunburn style redness. However, what the airbag has prevented is...
Welcome to the Dr. Health Channel, a place where healthcare professionals from all fields come together to share expert insights, empowering you, your family, and your loved ones to make informed decisions about your health and well-being. This channel is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. I'm your host, and to break it all down, we have an amazing guest today, Dr. Gandhi, a retired trauma surgeon and trauma medical director from the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area, who will walk us through everything regarding car crashes and how to be prepared, navigate, and most importantly, prevent it. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's get into it.
So we talk about accidents, and one of the things that we need to understand is that it's not a vehicle accident, it's a crash. So what makes us say that? Being in trauma, we know that it's not really a happenstance or an act of God, but there's usually a causation. And so we don't say accident, we say crash or collision, whether it's the car itself, whether it's the environment or a person. A drunk driver, the driver is impaired themselves. And so since there's a causation, that means there's a prevention side to it. And that's where we come in. Trauma centers usually have a robust prevention side to what they do. So they're actually trying to put themselves out of business. Not that it's ever going to happen. However, that's why we go back and say car collision, because we know that there's some way we could have prevented it. And actually, there's teams that go out after certain car crashes to look at what caused that crash and how do they improve their vehicle or what happened so that it doesn't happen again. Before a crash, there's a lot of things that have gone on to either prevent the crash or prevent injuries in a crash. What are some of those things? Well, we can start off with the car itself and seatbelts. So if you're older like me, you probably remember a time when there weren't seatbelts in the car. And it wasn't until 1968 that there were seatbelts that were put in. And those seatbelts then were expanded from just a lap belt to a lap and a shoulder harness. 1980s that many of these got put into production. The first seatbelt was actually made by Volvo in the 1950s. And then in the 60s, some of our other American manufacturers put seatbelts in. Some people have heard that wearing a seatbelt, it can actually get trapped in the car and burn up with the car. That has definitely not been proven in any kind of study. What usually will happen is after the car crash, you can unbuckle yourself. There are also devices that you can have. I have one in my car, which is right next to me on the door that I take out and I can cut through that if I was in a car crash. However, I've only been in a car crash twice, and the seatbelts were never an issue to get off both times. One time I was actually T-boned from someone that kind of went through a red light, T-boned. However, he was fine and the car did its job and my seatbelt came off pretty easily. So seatbelts are important restraint systems and they do not cause you to be trapped in a car after a car crash. Now we have what's known as the Supplemental Restraint System, or SRS, which is airbags. And so airbags, again, started in the 60s with GM and Ford actually working on them and Mercedes-Benz putting it into production. And finally, the government didn't actually mandate those to go into effect until the 1990s. So it's been decades with all these safety features being put in. Some people feel that airbags cause more harm than good. So let's talk about airbags. What are airbags? So airbags are, like we talked about, supplemental restraint systems. So they're supplement to our harness. And how do they work? So airbags actually detect when there's a crash. So the bumper is typically over 5 miles an hour. The bumper being pushed in causes an explosion that causes the airbag to inflate rapidly, right? It's actually an explosive charge in the airbag that inflates. And so if you've ever been in a crash, you know that that airbag is pretty quick and then deflates pretty quick, and there's powder. And that powder is like a talc. And why is that there? Because that airbag, since it goes up so fast, that talc is to absorb moisture and different things during heat and cold so that the airbag doesn't stick. And so it can inflate rapidly without having points that are sticking that don't inflate. So there's a few things that happen. One, the airbag going off, there's powder. Two, it is an explosion. And three, the airbag can rub on your chest and you may get a first-degree burn or like a sunburn style redness. However, what the airbag has prevented is from your head and your neck from moving forward and getting that hyperextension flexion injury. Two, it's prevented you from continuing to go forward against the steering wheel and getting rib fractures or internal bleeding from those ribs being broken and going into your liver, kidney, and spleen. And finally, it's prevented other issues such as facial bones that get broken. Your face can get broken with the steering wheel or the windshield if it's too close. So all of these things get prevented, not to mention from the side with the windshield that can cause issues as well, being broken. So all of these different things are prevented by airbags, and airbags do not cause more harm than good. What else has been done? Now we have what are known as crumple zones. What are crumple zones? Crumple zones are, especially in the front, where the engine actually crumples to take in the energy or forces from that crash that occurs. So again, you don't have that passenger compartment getting pushed in from the outside. So the crumple zone takes that energy, crumples, and the passenger compartment stays intact. These are big features that have been put in, again, over decades to what we have now as our vehicle. What else has been done? Well, we know brakes have improved. There's automatic brakes. We know there's now features and even AI features coming into cars in terms of when there's a person that comes, the car stops. The car has a lot more features than it used to manage the safety of the passenger within, as well as the person without or outside of the car. You've heard of lane changing features where if you start changing the lane, it'll automatically do that, or it'll keep you within a lane when you're traveling at a certain distance and a certain rate. Also, you have almost like automatic driving or self-driving where the car will take over and take you where you want to go so long as your hands are on the car. You've also heard of all those autonomous cars where they actually can drive themselves. And I experienced that in San Francisco. It was kind of interesting experience going into one of those autonomous car taxi services. It was actually more expensive than I expected. But it was interesting to not have a driver and for other features that you can do in the car when you get in. So an interesting experience. I think it's worthwhile to do it at least once. What other features have been in the safety part of the car. We also have the harness and the windshield. Before, the windshield would crack in such a way that the pieces of the glass would get into you. And with the harness now, at least if you wear that, then you will not hit that car. When my kids were young, they didn't like that harness pack, so they would put it behind them as I was driving. So then I'd pull over and I'd say, we're not going to move until that harness goes back. And then they put that back on, and then we drive a little bit. And then they get sick of that harness, take it off again, and then we pull over. So that happened a few times, and then they finally got it that every time they take off that harness part, we're going to pull over. So they've kept it on since. And that whole thing is to prevent us from hitting that windshield. So that's an important safety feature as well. Car seats have improved over time. And we went from not having car seats and people just being in laps to car seats where if a baby was put in front facing, that baby didn't do as well as rear facing. And so now we know that babies, infants up to 1.5 years need to be rear facing to prevent neck injuries. We didn't know that early on. The car seats themselves have gotten to a point where, again, you have a harness system. The car seats actually have a better harness system than we do because it's more like an H system. So it goes down this way and this way. So you're completely protected, or at least your baby is. You note that when you get onto an airplane, the stewards and stewardesses have that H style, and the pilot and the co-pilot, but we still just have our little lap belt. So it's just an interesting note. Wipers, simple, easy to do. You can do it yourself or have a place to do it. There's YouTube videos about how to change out wipers. Wipers are very simple. Remember, if you can't see, you can't drive. If you can't see, more potential for crashes. What else? Tires. Tires can be expensive. However, it's very, very important. Mercedes has a great video that they put out in 2023 about tread width from 0.2 or 2/16 of an inch to 9/16 of an inch, and how if you only have 2/16 of an inch left on your tread, it is going to take you at least 5 car lengths to stop when you're in some kind of rain or water situation. Huge difference in stopping length. And all these systems have gone to decrease the number of crashes and the injuries that we've seen over time.
Now that you know how safety features and vehicle maintenance can save lives, share this with your loved ones so you can stay informed too. We release new episodes every 2 weeks, so if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button wherever you consume content. Also hit the like button, drop a comment, turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode. As a bonus, click on the next video right here to learn about distractions and car crashes. You won't want to miss this. Until next time, stay tuned, stay safe, and stay healthy.